It is Thursday, the 27th day of May, 2010. Thank you so much for joining us. We're into the second hour. We're now simulcasting the last 3 hours at prisonplanet.tv. I want to say great job to my crew here. They just do a better and better job. Exemplary. We couldn't do it without them. And, of course, you, the listeners, AM and FM affiliates, sponsors, and all of our supporters. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts quit doing his twice-a-week column and said he wanted to take some time off, but I knew, a fighter for liberty, I knew he wasn't going away. So I called him up a few months ago, and I said, look, you can take some time for yourself. You're not going anywhere. Somebody that loves liberty can't control themselves. And so it's good to have him. But he has cut back on what he's been doing, but it's great to have him with us. And I was glad to get an email from him pointing out, hey, look at how there's all this evidence that our government, now been declassified, knowingly, many times has left POWs behind. Not just in Vietnam, not just Korea, but World War II. What does this say about the mindset of the elite? And so he wanted to come on and talk about that. We're always honored to have him. But we'll cover about 20, 30 minutes on that. Then I want to pick his brain because he is the father of Reaganomics. He is one of the top 10 living economists, according to Forbes and other major publications. He's won some of the biggest honors from the French, U.S., British government. He is a best-selling author, former editor of the Wall Street Journal. So I want to get into North Korea, Iran with him. I want to get into the economy. I mean, they're openly talking about worldwide meltdown now all over the news. And, of course, he talked about this years ago via the derivatives and everything. So we're going to talk about it all with Dr. Paul Craig Roberts in the next hour. Doc, it's good to have you here with us.
Hi, Alex.
You look good there via Skype video feed.
Right. Well, thank you.
So much is going on. So much is happening. But we're going to go to break in a few minutes. But get into this whole POW situation and your research on that.
Well, you know, it's not my research. It's Sidney Schrenberg, the Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times reporter and editor. He has proven beyond all doubt and presents all the evidence that American prisoners of war were left behind in Vietnam. So that's a scandal. The second scandal is that every administration since Richard Nixon's has continued to cover up. And the third scandal is that despite his high standing in journalism and all the prizes and the Pulitzer Prize and his high post at the New York Times, he was never allowed to write the story. And so it only came out in an out-of-the-way publication a year or two ago, about 2 years ago.
Yeah, we actually interviewed the folks involved at the time. In fact, I think I even interviewed him. In fact, let's get him back on, or some of the families involved. But the issue is, when I say your research, I'm saying, you know, you're writing about this now, how this your research into how this ties in to the mindset of the ruling class.
Yes, yes. I think that now that we have definite proof from a very credible source, Sidney Schrenberg, that the United States government conducted a conspiracy since the 1970s to hide the fact that they abandoned American prisoners of war to the North Vietnamese, that this is now proven, this might make Americans wonder if other so-called conspiracy theories are also true, such as the theory that 9/11 was an inside job or a false flag operation. It might make people wonder if the Warren Commission's account of Kennedy's assassination was just another cover-up. The same for Robert Kennedy's assassination.
Well, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, stay there. When we come back, let's go through this Pulitzer Prize winner's piece, recap it, go through the piece, and then let's expand into the mindset of an establishment, why they would do such a thing. We'll be right back with Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. Stay with us. You call it synchronicity, serendipity, I don't know, but back on Monday and Tuesday, I talked quite a bit about the fact that it was actually declassified, that 20-plus thousand, 21,500 or so U.S. troops that were in Eastern European Nazi-held POW camps and German camps that were grabbed by Stalin. The U.S. and England wanted to be buddies with Stalin. They divided up Eastern Europe, and he was a thug and kept him for intelligence purposes, and they just They just let them keep them. And a few years ago, that actually even came out in Russian newspapers. Old Americans, World War II vets, 80-plus years old, still alive in Russia. And it's been confirmed with Korea. It's been confirmed with Vietnam. We've had the families on. They've had congressional hearings that the media doesn't cover. They've had National Press Club meetings. But then when I got an email a few days ago from Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, father of Reaganomics, former head of policy Department of Treasury under Reagan, former Wall Street Journal editor, pointing out that he was going to write an article dealing with the fact that if it's a Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times editor for years isn't allowed to publish in a mainstream publication his research that's ironclad, that this is all confirmed. I mean, it's ridiculous how confirmed it is. It's like confirming that Mount St. Helens blew up in the early 1980s. It's a fact. It happened. Or that, the first creature in space was a dog from Russia. It's a fact. And, the angle. And, of course, Roberts wasn't listening to me. He separately put two and two together because we're all having these same understandings that if they'll leave our troops to die, or if it's like Doug Rockey I've had on. He was the head of the DU program for more than a decade. He wrote the handbooks for the Pentagon in the 80s. They knew DU would kill anybody collectively that breathed it. And they just, in the mid-90s, changed the rules and said it's now good for you, no problem. And the State Department says it's a conspiracy theory on their website if you say it's bad. I mean, they absolutely know you breathe this, the particulate, the radiation, it's going to kill you. I mean, it's going to, may take a few years, but you're dead. Now they just say it's good for you. This shows you the mindset. And I likened it, and we're going to Dr. Roberts, but I want to make this point, to chess being invented 3,500 years ago in northern India and what's Iran today. They debate who invented it, but it came from that area. And in it, you have the gambit, the sacrifice of a pawn. That's a good move early on, in basic chess. I'm not a good chess player, but I play some. Sacrificing a pawn. And it's a special forces tactic in the books. It's taught at West Point. Send in, 20 guys. First to go, last to know. They're going to get wiped out, but that's going to bring in the enemy into the gorge. That will then reveal their positions, and you can then wipe out the larger force. And the argument is you lose 20 men, but you save thousands in the battle by losing the 20 men. So that's why they staged 9/11. That's why they say, so what, 21,000 U.S. troops, give them to Stalin. That's why they say, hundreds and hundreds of U.S. troops, was thousands, most of them dead. Let them be slaves, let them be tortured to death for 30 years in Vietnam. It's the gambit. And that's the beginning of evil. That's why special forces people, before they graduate, they are given, for Delta Force level, they're given one night to read The Prince by Machiavelli and then to write a paper. And if they say, I believe the end justifies the means, they go, you're the man we're looking for, you're now recruited. If they say, no, I won't kill children, this is now in an Army manual declassified last year, was leaked by WikiLeaks from 2004, where it talks about staging false flag terror attacks. One of the favorites is to kill children, blame it on the foreign enemy. Captains and above in Black Ops are now taught this. And the argument is, well, we're fighting commies or we're fighting Muslims. They're going to kill more children if we don't kill a few, for the overall good. And that's kind of the straight razor, statement in Apocalypse Now, where Colonel Kurtz is talking about what he's had to do to win. And so this is the mindset of end justifies the means. Now I'm going to shut up and have Dr. Paul Craig Roberts go over this 2-year-old information. The Nation Institute reported it. McCain and the POW cover-up. This was written by a Pulitzer Prize winner. But completely a news blackout in the U.S. Dr. Roberts, thanks for holding while I did that backstory. You've got the floor.
Well, let's first tell your listeners where they can read the account. It came out yesterday in the American Conservative, and so you'll have an account by the publisher of the magazine. You'll have an account by Schranberg of why he was unable to tell the story, and then you have the story itself and the evidence. He presents all the evidence. And then they have a few people discussing the story. Now, it's also, I think, this morning, it was all put up on antiwar.com. And I'm sure you'll have it up on your site so that people can see that what was branded a conspiracy theory for several decades by the government, by the media, by all the mainstream, the establishment. They got rid of the POW issue by calling it a conspiracy theory. It's now been proven beyond all doubt that the conspiracy theory was true. The POWs were abandoned, there was a cover-up by the United States government that continues to this day. It's just like the cover-up of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty. This was said to have been some kind of an accident, a mistaken identity of the ship, and that's been covered up ever since the 1960s. So we do have government cover-ups, a government that commits great acts of evil. I mean, what's more despicable than abandoning your own POWs?